Up next, Dr. Kenneth Qiu. He is the founder and head physician at UDOC, DPC in Virginia, and it says here, primary care advocate. I had this whole, where are you, Kenneth? I saw you walk over there. You're back there now. I had this whole intro written up for you, okay? However, when I saw primary care advocate, that is the understatement of the century. If anyone knows Kenneth and anyone is in the DPC world, your life has been touched by the work that he does on a national level, on a less national level. I don't know if state level is the right word. Kenneth has been drinking deeply of the DPC Kool-Aid since medical school. He has been an advocate for direct primary care. He has been, he's a fantastic physician as well, but that's, neither here nor there right now. But he, I don't know if lobbies is the right term, but he's on the Hill routinely with the team there. So let's continue our tradition from yesterday. Let's give a standing ovation for Dr. Kenneth Qiu.
Standing is generous. All right. Cool. We'll get started here. All right. So just wanted to mention before I started that I do have advisory in hand health and mending because I'm going to mention those companies later. So once upon a time, there was a village where the inhabitants were chronically malnourished and always tired. The reason for this is because all they ate was bread. It's all they knew, it's all they made. Now there were innovations. They had focaccia, they had sourdough, and even pretzel. But at the end of the day, it was just bread. Well, one day, one of the villagers goes out, hunts an animal, heats it over fire, and discovers meat. After eating it, he feels a lot better, and he brings it back to his village, where he is immediately met with resistance. Eating meat is unethical. Eating meat will worsen the hunger problem. Eating meat doesn't scale, but he persisted. And he grew stronger, and over time, more and more people joined him. As the meat-eating movement grew, the early converts became evangelical. Bread is what makes us weak, they said. Once you've experienced the strength that comes with eating meat, how could you ever go back to eating bread? But as their movement grew and younger villagers joined later on, they began to notice something. While hunting and preparing their meat, they discovered berries, wild vegetables, and nuts. And some even tried some bread along their meat and realized, hey, it actually feels kind of good. When the early pioneers found out, they were horrified. They accused the young villagers of going backwards, saying, we ate bread for years, and it made us feel terrible. How could you go back? To which the younger villagers replied, what if the problem wasn't bread itself? What if it was the fact that you only ate bread? What if we could eat meat and bread and all these other things we're discovering? And that's where we are in the DPC movement today. So traditional primary care, surviving exclusively on an insurance payment diet, has been left chronically malnourished and exhausted. Two of the problems with this diet are, one, inadequate payments, and two, excessive administrative burden. Direct patient payment solves for both of those, as patients are willing to pay more for primary care than insurance, and they don't require burdensome reporting. The early DPC movement was one of escapism, a freedom from mentality. It was freedom from insurance company interference, freedom from bureaucratic box checking, and freedom from 15-minute visits that turned care into assembly line process. Direct primary care took primary care from an exclusive insurance diet to a more robust model with direct patient payments. So before diving into, right now, most DPC enthusiasts define direct primary care as what we reject, which is third-party payments. But what moving us out of an exclusive insurance diet actually did was open the door to pursue other revenue sources. The next generation of DPC may be defined more so by what it can embrace than what it rejects. So before diving into the menu, let's have a 10,000-foot understanding of how healthcare is financed in this country. Fundamentally, there's only one payer of healthcare. That is the individual, you and me. Through taxes, deferred wages, and out-of-pocket payments, we pay for healthcare. So there's one payer and two financial entities. Roughly half of Americans receive their care from their employer, a third from the government, leaving about 1 in 5 to finance healthcare individually. Historically, all three of these groups go through health insurance to receive their care. Under the traditional insurance model, primary care is just one on the payment menu. And compared to pharma, hospitalists, specialists, primary care usually comes up last with no other recourse. Direct primary care flips the script and allows primary care physicians to be the ones in the driver's seat holding the menu. The core item on this menu still remains direct patient payments. And this is crucial because direct patient payments is what makes DPC DPC. The term DINO, or DPC in name only, gets thrown around a lot, usually more so as an insult than a defined term. But there's one thing that can't really be contested. If there is no direct patient component, then it's really hard to call that practice a direct primary care practice. So DPC practices have done really well in the individual market. They've helped plenty of individuals who haven't had anything else access high quality care. And savvy individuals have learned to pair their DPC membership with high deductible health plans, health shares, and innovative models like crowd health, which help them reduce the cost of their care without compromising the quality of their care. In this market, there are two special things that I want to mention. One is the passage of H.R. 1, also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. You don't have to take a picture of this. I just had GPT pull out the text on DPC from the PDF. But essentially, this unlocks officially health savings accounts and direct primary care memberships. And this can exponentially grow the DPC movement as it now allows individuals to use tax-free dollars for their DPC memberships. This also allows employers to bake in DPC memberships into their plans while still offering HSAs to their employees. The second mention is mending. So failure of traditional health insurance happened because of the things I mentioned earlier. So low payments, too much administrative burden. And so mending is actually an ACA-compliant individual marketplace exchange plan that contracts only with DPC practices. So in essence, it's an insurance company that convinced a bunch of doctors who swore off insurance to take insurance. And the way they did this was before they launched, they spent a ton of time talking to DPC doctors, trying to find the failure points and pain points. And they currently operate out of Maine and Oklahoma with great success, and all the doctors there are happy and growing, being in network with them. So working with mending, they pay the rates that are close to what's asked, which is a lot higher than traditional insurance, and there's no change to a doctor's workflow, no prior auths, no claims, or anything like that. All right, so moving to the next item on the menu is employers. So employers started sponsoring DPC memberships usually on the smaller scale, the ones that had nothing else to offer, who found a local DPC and started paying for their employees. And even though this introduces the idea of a third payer, a lot of the Gen 1 pioneers are actually okay with this. Where there's a little bit of a philosophical divide is the next half step forward. Working with larger employers creates some challenges. So we'll go into a little bit of employer-sponsored insurance, how it works, and some of the companies that are helping to bridge that gap. So companies provide healthcare in three major categories: fully insured, level funded, and self-funded. Fully insured simply means the employer will pay an insurance company to take on full risk and do insurance things. Level funded is kind of an in-between, so the employer is paying for essentially insurance kind of services, and if the claims are lower than expected, they can get a refund from that. And then self-funded is where the employer becomes the insurance company themselves, takes on full risk. They have a stop loss, a third-party administrator, and all that stuff. Very brief overview. But essentially, DPC can be built into level-funded and self-funded plans. And so direct primary care as an ERISA benefit in one of these plans has a lot of benefits. First, it's tax-free for the employers, therefore also the employees. There's a seamless experience with the rest of the health plan, so it doesn't feel like two separate things. And then ERISA, which is the big federal law that governs health benefits, it overrides the patchwork of state requirements, and so dealing with ERISA is a lot easier than figuring out a lot of the state requirements. And then finally, and probably most importantly, is it's seen as a core benefit rather than some fringe wellness thing. But there are challenges. So one of the requirements of ERISA is that you have to have equal benefits for everybody across the board. And so most DPCs right now are single mom and pops, maybe locally, if you're lucky, regional. Whereas a lot of the employers have footprints in multiple states, multiple cities, and so connecting the two makes it really hard. And that's where you have some of the innovations coming in to bridge those two things. First is the local DPC and affiliate network. This is one of the oldest versions of this. So essentially, like a single DPC will work with an employer, do really well, and then more bigger employers get interested. Then they hit their first employer that's in their region and somewhere else. And so the solution then was essentially to subcontract with them for their rates, taking a small administrative fee. Notable examples of that include NextEra Healthcare, founded by Dr. Clint Flanagan, and it's been going on for a while. The next is the affiliate network only. So this is where an organization will contract with DPC clinics. They don't have a DPC themselves, but they contract and have a network, and they go and sell to medium or large size employers and then kind of route the employees to the individual practices. So Hink Connect is an example of this affiliate network. And then the newest development is the digital marketplaces. So instead of necessarily forming a network or a group, they provide a platform, and they go to employers, and the employers then put their employees on this platform where they can pick individual practices based on their preferences. So some of the quickly emerging companies from that are Aptly and Align Marketplace. Now these are still fairly new, and they're still developing how to best work with individual DPC practices. All right. So these innovations allow even single clinic, single doctor practices to have a seat at the employer-sponsored plan table. And this gives them access to 150 million Americans who receive coverage from their work. All right, and then I'm going to skip government today because it's not really the scope of this conference. Also, it gets really complicated really fast, no surprise. All right, so when deciding how and when to deal with third parties, we have to evaluate the two things that plague traditional primary care. Again, that's inadequate payment and excessive administrative burden. Lack of choice is what caused the malnutrition of traditional primary care. But we can also fall into a similar trap if we begin to accept payments that are less or jump through unnecessary hoops that maybe we feel are reasonable at the time in order to grow out of greed or desperation. To give credit to the original pioneering class of DPC physicians, the reason why some of these employer solutions exist and why companies like Mending exist in its current form is because the early DPC docs held really tightly to their core principles and therefore shaped the healthcare landscape accordingly. So connecting more patients with DPC practices will help independent, All right. Yeah, as DPCs establish their financial stability and demonstrate their value, we're going to be shifting our mindset fundamentally from that previous escapism, freedom from, to a builder's freedom to. Right now, we have the freedom to practice real medicine that is based on sound clinical judgment rather than billing optimization. We have the freedom to build direct relationships that focus more on healing than documentation. And we have the freedom to influence and transform healthcare from a position of proven success. The DPC model still has a ways to go before it takes its rightful place as the predominant primary care model for this country. Achieving this goal requires both growth in DPC practices as well as multiplication of partners who are willing to work with us. DPC clinicians have two vital roles in achieving this vision. One, it is to have the openness to engage, to educate, and work with some of these partners that want to come in and advance our movement. And the second is to hold steadfast to some of the core beliefs that we have moving forward so that we can better assess who works with us and who doesn't. So like the young villagers who realize that maybe it's not bread, but bread alone that causes all the problems, we're starting to learn that maybe not all third-party payers are the problem, but exclusively focusing on just exploitative insurance payments is what caused all the issues. The future of DPC, the difference is that now, when we were previously on the menu, we now hold the menu. We get to determine which partners align with our values and advance our mission. We get to decide which revenue sources support what we do rather than compromise the care we give. The future of DPC lies not in rigid ideology about different payment methods, but rather the selection of partnerships that preserve what makes us powerful. That is our direct partnership, our direct relationship with patients, our clinic autonomy, and our freedom from administrative burden. As we expand this movement, we must realize that our strength comes not from rejecting things, but from embracing others selectively, strategically, and ultimately in service of the greater goal, which is to transform primary care for the better in this country. And with that, I am open for questions.
Hello? Oh, there we go. So my first question is, when are you running for president? No, for real. I think another piece that we really need to do a good job with as DPC docs, and I need your help since you did it right out of residency, is getting people into DPC right out of their training instead of making them go to, like, they don't know any better, they go to the system, they get burnt out, and then they're seeking DPC later. So I would love your input and anything you have to say about reaching out to residents and med students and what, like, how you were grabbed to do that. And yeah, because a lot of us now that we've been open for a while, we need help and we're trying to find other docs to hire, and that's really hard with non-competes and things like that. So I would love to hear your input on that.
Yeah, so I learned about it pretty early, fourth year of med school at the DPC summit, and like Brad said, drank the Kool-Aid super hard and still am. But I think it's challenging. There are a lot of efforts out there, like what we're doing at the DPC Alliance. We have a resident medical student committee. We have a resident medical student board member to try to encourage people to get there early. I think the challenges in the learner space and the pipeline, as we all know, is the debt situation, right? I think the average now is somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000. The average med student comes out with debt, and a lot of them aren't going to be able to spend money to start a practice. And I think most DPC practices right now still have a eat what you kill model. So even that is just too much risk. And when you come out of residency, for a lot of people, that's when they're starting their families. So that's another financial pressure. And so why I kind of advocate for DPC expanding the menu and working with more people is if we can help these practices grow faster, again, being careful about the greed and desperation side, is that we might be able to then find some way to finance more of these people coming straight out, that we can actually compete with the people who are providing the golden handcuffs. Not that we want to provide golden handcuffs. I think we'll have to meet them somewhere in the middle. It's like, hey, you don't have to worry about the financial burden, and you can can live the DPC lifestyle. So I think, growing the movement will help a lot of the new trainees kind of enter DPC straight up.
So let's just say you are a DPC, you're an internal medicine private practice doctor. Describe in 3 or 4 minutes what's your daily what's your practice like? What's the experience?
What does it look like to practice?
What does a day look like? You get a wide variety of everything from perfectly healthy young people, to the 40 and 50-year-olds with 1, 2, 3 multiple chronic conditions. So why is it better? Just describe what a day's like.
Yeah.
So we can see that it's a better delivery.
Okay. Yeah. What makes DPC different? So I'm family medicine. I do kids and adults. The main difference really is, a lot of people talk about the time, right? So at my practice, our new patient visits are 90 minutes to start, and then every other time slot is 30 or 60 minutes, depending. Most people don't spend the whole time, but we allow for it because we want to give them the time to be heard, to educate, and a lot of what primary care is relationship building, and sometimes a little bit of salesmanship to sell them on the statin that they heard is evil on the internet. So having that time is very different. And so in order to have that time, you kind of reduce the number of patients you see in person. As we all know, direct primary care has smaller patient panels compared to traditional medicine. But the other thing that we do really well compared to all the other models is our use of asynchronous messaging, right? So I would say, and I may be an anomaly because I've talked to other docs that have different percentages, but about 80% of my care is done by text. And it's not because I don't really see patients in office, it's just because patients message so much. Even as a point of marketing, when I started out, I really talked about, you same next day, you can come in and talk as long as you want, but a lot of the patients actually really like not having to come in. The number of times I've gotten thank you texts saying this is great, I'm so glad I didn't have to schedule, check in, and then see you is fantastic. And so when you're able to take even a 15-minute in-person visit and turn that into a 30-second text, that just frees up all sorts of time. So I think getting to treat people like it's 2025, people have said direct primary care is like having a doctor in the family, right? So if somebody has an issue, their first line is to message you, not to schedule a time to come visit your house. And so we get to treat patients like normal people in 2025. And then secondly is just building that relationship with longer visits and more accessibility. And yeah, we get the full gamut. I will say, because I don't know if there's some subtext to that question, but in the government section that I'm not talking about, there are people, myself included, trying to figure out how a partnership with Medicaid could work. One of the criticisms about direct primary care is that we kind of box out the underserved, which is not true because, again, a lot of people who otherwise don't have access to anything else, or maybe a high deductible and just go into ER all the time, direct primary care is a very high value thing for them. But understandably, there are people who are on the safety net who do need some assistance, and that's where there are some of us who are working on these kind of side things to try to bring more access to more people.
I'll be quick. So if DPC can be integrated to level funded and self-funded, who's kind of helping the employer with the selection from the carrier to ensure that they're not, getting the 10% premium increase, or is it just counseled to select the HDHP plan and that's a lower premium anyway? I mean, how to help them just move this way eventually 100%. But right now, is there a perception that they would be double paying?
Yeah, so that's kind of the premise of this conference a little bit. I'm sure people in this room, we're upstairs, right? Yeah, people downstairs, the benefit advisors are figuring out how to bake DPC into the plans. And Fritz over here has been working on actuarial studies on exactly what it looks like, how much the cost savings are. So the answer is I'm not a broker and it's complicated.
We won't have time to do this. I just want to put this in front of you. You talked about spent a lot of time on the employer space. And I've recently gotten more vocal about calling my shot, doing the Babe Ruth. and saying that DPC is going to be the dominant payer model for primary care. It is only a question of time. And there's a couple things that have to happen there, and I'd like your thoughts. But you mentioned you didn't want to tackle government because it's very complicated, but maybe give some thoughts about what it looks like from between now and in 15 years when it is the dominant payer model, which I believe it will be. What does that transition look like, if you believe it's going to happen? But just very curious if you had thoughts on that.
Yeah. Okay. Big question. I'm going to tread lightly on this one. So I think we're going to see a lot more people get frustrated in the traditional system. They're going to leave. They're going to open their direct primary cares. Like, that's not going away. We're going to have the individual practices, independent practices kind of sprout out. In general, I think healthcare is moving towards, there's always this like pendulum of aggregate, deaggregate, and we're moving towards a deaggregating time in the world anyways. But I think a lot more individual practices are going to show up. But there's going to be, I guess, two flavors of DPC. One that kind of stays independent, small, at max maybe 5 doctors, 2 practices. And then you're going to have other people who kind of master true operations, which is just multiple practices across multiple locations, maybe multiple states. And they're the ones that figure out how to work with employers, figure out how to contract with the government, so on and so forth. And so, yeah, you're going to have big corporations, and then you're going to have the individuals. And where it gets tricky, I would say, is like, when does DPC lose its DPC flavor? And that's why when I talk about kind of growth and opportunity in different payers, I want to remind people that, I think direct to consumer really is what drives that kind of alignment of incentives. So even if you have other payers, as long as you keep that there, you're going to continue delivering this high value, high quality thing, and really just focus on the patient, because they are your customer as well as the person you're taking care of. So yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be people who learn how to get bigger, and for those, you gotta be careful. And even on the payer side, because I mentioned I advise mending, I'm like, look, if the money gets good, you're going to have all sorts of charlatans pop up, so you just gotta make sure that even you know how to spot somebody who's DPC minded versus somebody who just wants to take your capitated payments and then go be some like new school HMO. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I think could happen and are happening. And so right now, it's early and we're a small group. A lot of us know each other, and as long as we keep supporting each other and helping bring the right people into the fold, I think we'll grow well.